I see Rick. Looks like we have a good crew. Yes. Where am I? Okay. I pretty much see no reason not to start. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Dan Godek, and I'm chair of the Royal Traffic Committee. We're going to call to order the March 23rd, 7 p.m. Citizens Traffic Committee meeting. And I usually start this out with a roll call. And I'm going to call your name, and if you could unmute and I'm going to try it this way and say aye. I'll start with Thomas Allen.
Aye.
And we have Bellum Morales. Are you here, Bellum?
Aye.
Right.
Aye.
Yep.
Aye.
Gotcha.
Sorry. Oh,
Thanks. Blaine Tlander.
Aye.
Rick Karlowski.
Aye.
I see Stefan Pernell.
Aye.
There we go. Amanda Smith.
Aye.
Okay. I think we have Andrew.
Yes, aye.
And then we're getting into staff after that, I believe. Holly, the city engineer. You're not
I'm here. Thank you.
Okay. And our ROPD representative.
Aye.
Hello. And we have the city manager listening in.
Present.
All right. Thanks, Paul. Did I miss anybody? Oh, I'm sorry, Jennifer.
Yep, I'm here. I'll start sharing my screen.
Great, thank you. Now get back to completing the roll call. We got the preamble. I'll try to get through this quick. The traffic committee consists of Royal Oak homeowners who are appointed by the city commission. We are volunteers and we're not paid or elected. What we decide tonight is merely a recommendation to the city commission. If you do agree or do not agree with the findings or decisions of this committee, you should go in front of the city commission and discuss your issue with them. At this meeting, you're going to be given an opportunity to speak during your item on the agenda, but at the city commission meeting, you must be recognized during the public comment portion of the agenda, otherwise you won't be heard. And Holly, do you know when our items are going to be coming in front of the city commission?
Yes, that'll be the April 12th commission meeting at 7:30 p.m.
April 12th. Thank you. And the rest of the preamble here is it's important to understand that the professionals made preliminary recommendations of traffic committee consisting of civil and traffic engineers, consultants, and public safety officials. You may have been informed that your request has been denied, but that doesn't mean we're going to vote that way. We try to approach things in a sensible and pragmatic manner. Our ultimate recommendation to the city commission will be one that benefits the citizens and community as a whole. The next thing I'm seeing is minutes from the January 26th meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Tom Allen.
We have a motion by Tom Allen for the minutes. Is there support?
Support.
Support.
I think I heard Karlowski first. So we'll take that as a second. Any edits or comments on the minutes? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Minutes passed. Public comment, items not on the agenda. This is the time for anybody in the virtual audience to raise their hand if their item is not on the agenda. If you're on the agenda, you're going to be given an opportunity to speak at that time. Is there anyone here to speak on items that are not on the agenda? Are you seeing any hands raised, Jennifer?
Just double checking now, allowing a moment. No, not seeing any hands for items not on the agenda.
Great. I'm going to close public comment then and move on to rescheduled items and old business. 5A, results of the January Traffic Committee recommendations to the City Commission. Holly?
Yeah, thanks. Before I get into this, I guess I wanted to make sure that all the attendees know if you want to speak during your portion, that there's like a little button to click that will like raise your hand, and that lets us know that you want to speak on a certain topic. So just in case if this is your first time, just so you're aware of that. So item 5A, we brought the January 26th Traffic Committee recommendations to the City Commission at their February 8th meeting. The Commission did approve all of the recommendations with the exception of item 6E, and this had to do with the unapproved paved parking areas on Delamere Boulevard. The Commission directed staff to move forward with applying for CDBG funding this spring in order to potentially construct something in 2022. Staff had determined that the road could potentially be restriped to allow for on-street parallel parking on one side of the road. And that kind of happened in between our traffic committee meeting and the City Commission meeting. So they seemed to be somewhat in favor of that idea, but didn't want to really move ahead without presenting that both to the traffic committee and then also to the property owners along Delamere. So that's on our agenda tonight. We'll talk about that as I think it's item 6D. And we'll get into it at that time. I think that's all I had to say about that one.
Thanks, Hallie. Sorry, just getting to my next page here. That would move us into 6A, request to evaluate speeding and truck traffic on Vincetta Boulevard. Back to you, Holly.
Thanks. So we had received a request from Angela Cortese of 1105 Vincetta to install speed bumps, stop ahead signs, or other alerts to keep drivers from ignoring the stop sign on northbound Vincetta at Lawndale Drive. She had noted that drivers are ignoring the sign, and she's already contacted the police several times. She also requested that a sidewalk be installed north-south to allow pedestrians to cross the road at the intersection. We talked about this at our last meeting, January 26th, and it was ultimately tabled in order to get some additional traffic data. During that time, we also had a second request from Susan Frentz of 1617 Vincetta, so same block of Vincetta, to install 25-mile-per-hour signs at the northbound and southbound entryways to Vincetta, to post no truck signage, to clearly mark the crosswalk at all intersections, to install stop signs at the Boulevard crossover at Lawndale, and to maintain the existing stop sign for northbound Vincetta at Lawndale. So I'll go into kind of what the staff came up with. Some of this is a repeat and some of this is some new information. So Vincetta is a major road. It consists of composite pavement with concrete curb and gutter, and there are two 22-foot wide lanes that are separated by a boulevard. Currently, there is a four-way stop at Greenleaf and Vincetta. And Jen, maybe if you could scroll down to page 4, I think that has like an aerial image to help people kind of visualize what we're talking about. Thanks. And then there's also one stop sign for northbound Vincetta at Lawndale. So those are kind of shown in the little red figures there. So the 3-year accident report showed that there were 4 crashes along the roadway. 2 of them occurred near Lawndale. One of those was a rear end crash at the Lawndale stop sign, and the other included a bicycle and vehicle accident on the southbound side of Vincetta near Lawndale. And then there were also 2 crashes near the Greenleaf intersection, and in both cases, a driver on Vincetta had failed to stop for drivers that were trying to proceed east and west on Greenleaf. So the city originally requested traffic counts from the TIA to evaluate the stop sign at Lawndale. And so this is kind of a repeat. The table under number 4 there of the data that we had at our last meeting, just kind of show what the traffic volumes are on each leg of that intersection. And then we also requested traffic measurements for speed and for traffic volume along the entire corridor after our January meeting, because we heard a lot of feedback during public comment about speeding issues, and that seemed to be the biggest concern for many neighbors. So those are measured in February and are kind of shown here in a table. We did them at 2 locations. One was near Lawndale on both the northbound and southbound side, And then the second location was near Woodsboro, again, northbound and southbound. The traffic counts for northbound and southbound Vincetta combined are around 1,000 to 1,100 vehicles per day. That's at the low end for a major road. Typically, we would expect around 1,800 to 2,870 vehicles per day. And truck traffic range from about 1% to 3%. And that's pretty typical for a local and major street. Truck prohibitions are typically only something we look at if the truck traffic is getting closer to 10% of the total traffic counts. The 85th percentile speed is generally within the acceptable range for this 25 mile per hour street. We like to see 25 to 27 miles per hour. We did get one reading at 28 miles per hour, but it doesn't necessarily appear to be a trend along the corridor. I will note the first row in that table, northbound data near Lawndale, the TIA noted that they don't think that data is representative. They think their counter had an error there. So the 20 miles per hour is probably not actually correct. 0% truck traffic is definitely not correct. I did copy in the traffic volume that we had gotten the previous month to, again, kind of compare and get a total count for Vincetta there. So I just wanted to note that. Let's see, where was I? So Vincetta Boulevard, it's a major road. It's typical practice for us to install speed limit signs on our major roads. And currently there is one there for northbound Vincetta, just as you get off of Woodward, but we don't have one near the 12-mile entrance into Vincetta. It should be noted the study was conducted during the COVID-19 pandemic, so traffic volumes are expected to be lower than normal. The area could potentially be studied again in the future if we ever get a normal condition back again, and that would be ultimately requested by the residents, likely at least a year from now. We try to keep a year between studies. So moving on to item 9, based on the Michigan Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, the existing stop sign for northbound Vincetta at Lawndale does not meet the recommended criteria for a multi-way stop application. Typically, you would see something like 5 or more reported crashes in a 12-month period, or vehicle volumes on either the major street approaches or the minor street approaching being significantly higher than they are now. We're talking, 300 vehicles per hour when we were seeing like 500 vehicles per day on those legs. And then also really high pedestrian volumes. And while I know it's a popular pedestrian route, it doesn't come anywhere near to meeting the hundreds of pedestrians that you would want to see to warrant a stop sign. So the stop sign on Vincetta could potentially be removed. Removal of the stop sign does require drivers familiar with the area to actually adapt to the changes. So for example, drivers on Lawndale might expect that people on Vincetta are going to stop because they were used to the stop sign, and that could ultimately result in an accident. However, traffic counts on Lawndale are significantly low. And based on the concerns that were presented, it kind of sounds like drivers are probably already used to checking that Vincetta traffic actually stops before they proceed. Currently, there are no sidewalks for pedestrians to cross over the boulevard on Vincetta. The only place we have them is near the Northwood Elementary School, which is a whole separate section of Vincetta that's north of 12 Mile. The city's sidewalk program is used each year to repair city sidewalks and also construct new sidewalks to foster a walkable city. And each year, the City Commission will evaluate potential areas for new sidewalk depending on wherever we're working in the city that year. So sidewalk improvements for this section are scheduled for 2023, and all crossovers on Vincetta is something that we could evaluate at that time as part of the program. The Michigan Manual notes that stop or yield signs may be placed within the medians, but it's not a requirement. And considering the lack of accident history at turnarounds, stop signs are not recommended to be installed at every single turnaround on Vincetta. The only exception here would be at Greenleaf Drive. We did observe, again, the 2 crashes there. And so additional stop signs in the median to help reinforce that it's an all-way stop might be helpful to drivers. In addition to that, because it's an all-way stop, the little all-way plaques should be installed below all the stop signs at the Greenleaf intersection. And that's just something that's in accordance with the Michigan Manual. So suggested staff recommendations are to install a 25-mile-per-hour sign for southbound Vincetta, just south of 12 Mile Road, to remove the stop sign and the stop bar for northbound Vincetta at Lawndale, to install stop signs within the median of Vincetta at Greenleaf, and to install all-way plaques to the stop signs at that intersection. And then finally, to present new sidewalk options for crossing Vincetta Boulevard to the Commission in 2023 as part of the city's sidewalk program. So our estimated cost for that work is about $800. I'll note that we did get 6 comments emailed in to us, and those were shared with the traffic committee prior to this meeting. And general summary, every single one of them said, please keep the stop sign. Residents really don't want to see that taken away. So I guess that's my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions or comments on that.
Great, thank you, Holly. Are there any initial questions from the committee for Holly before we open it up for public comment? I'm not hearing anybody from the committee at this time. If there's anybody in the virtual audience that would like to speak on this topic, that would be the time to hit the raise your hand button.
Okay, we do have a few people that want to speak on this item. So the first person is Angela Cortez. Angela, I just allowed you to speak. You just need to unmute yourself.
Great. Can you guys hear me?
We can, yes.
Wonderful.
If you could introduce your name and where you live at.
Sure.
That tell us why you think this is a good idea or a bad idea.
Yep. My name is Angela Cortez. I live at 1105 Vincetta Boulevard. So I'm the one who originally wrote in asking for something to be done about the speeding and traffic that goes through the stop sign at Lawndale in Vincetta. So thank you for walking us through everything that you guys are doing with the survey and recommendations. I appreciate, just the fact that you guys are looking into this. I am very much in favor of adding more signs. So the 25-mile-an-hour sign on the southbound side of Vincetta, I think, is a great idea. As people are coming through 12 Mile, they typically just take that turn pretty quick and just gun it down Vincetta. So anything we can do to help alert people of, the fact that it's a neighborhood and that it's a 25-mile-an-hour road would be much appreciated. The stop sign at Lawndale and Vincetta is immediately outside of my living room window and office window, so I see it all the time. So I would just ask the committee to please reconsider taking down the stop sign. The amount of traffic we get zipping through off of Woodward going 45 or 50 miles an hour is pretty high. And I think oftentimes people just miss that sign altogether. So they're speeding, they're nearly hitting cars who are trying to either do a U-turn on Vincetta at that crossway or, who are turning to go down Lawndale. So I want to keep the neighborhood safe. And I ask, even though, it doesn't adhere to the traffic control, whatever, that you guys reconsider. There's a lot of pedestrians out on the road. And I think if you guys were to conduct a survey during non-COVID times, during the summer months or spring months, even when it's not 15 degrees out, you would see a much different story in terms of speeding and the amount of pedestrian traffic that we do have.
All right, thank you, Angela. I'm going to mute you here. And then next up, we have a Jennifer. Jennifer, I'm allowing you to talk. You just need to unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Great. Hi, this is Jennifer Southwood. I reside at 1312 Vincetta Boulevard. I'm at the corner of Greenleaf. First, I would like to say thank you for the recommendation to install signs in the median at Greenleaf because this stop sign is so often missed. So I completely support that, and I thank you for making that recommendation, and I hope that that one passes. I would like to also echo what Angela said, is that I do think that Lawndale stop sign is necessary. I can't remember if you go back a page, if the one that had the average 20-mile-per-hour error was the northbound traffic. Yeah, near Lawndale. So that one wasn't recording traffic correctly, it looks like. I believe when those cars are coming off Woodward at 45, 50 miles an hour, they're not exactly hitting the brakes when they come on to Vincetta. So I think that speed is significantly higher. I also think that stop sign helps to control the traffic, at least some of it as it proceeds northbound. The other thing I would say is that I feel like at some point that stop sign was put in because it was necessary. And I don't know if you have the history of that stop sign or not. Obviously it is COVID, traffic is down. But I think it's going to go up, and I especially think it will go back up considering all of the technology now that helps people to cut through our neighborhoods to get where they're going. I do see semi trucks going down our street all the time. And the other thing I just like to also echo what Angela said is that the pedestrian traffic, February 15th or 3rd or whatever the date was definitely not representative of what happens on this street on a daily basis under good weather conditions, even as evidenced by the last couple of days here. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jennifer.
Great, thank you, Jennifer. All right, the next person we have that wanted to speak is Bill Wolf. Bill, I just allowed you to talk. You just need to unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, I live at 1041 Vincetta. We've lived here 46 years, so that stop sign's been there the whole time. We've raised 4 children out of this house, and it so happened that all their friends lived on Iroquois or Oak Ridge, so they had to walk over there 2 or 3 times a day. The other issue about people coming off of Woodward is absolutely true. They're doing, if you catch that light right at Catalpa, you just whiz right around the corner there. And the only thing that's stopping them to make them slow down is that stop sign. So your question about them going 20 miles an hour or 30 is somewhat irrelevant because that stop sign slows them down. If that wasn't there, they'd go sailing all the way to Greenleaf. Let's see. Oh, okay. My wife is saying something. Anyway, and the only other thing I have to say is, why would you take the stop sign down? What are you gaining? 10 cents a mile in gas, or what's the issue that you take the stop sign down for? That been there for 50 years plus, and everybody thought was a pretty good idea that lived around here. You have to take the people that live around here into consideration. And frankly, if you guys lived here and had children, there's no question which way you would vote. You'd vote to leave the stop sign. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Cool.
Let's see, we've got a few more people still. Next up is James Carnegie. James, I just allowed you to talk. You just need to unmute yourself.
I am unmuted. You hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Holly, that was a really good presentation. I live on Mayfield, one door off of Vincetta, and Mayfield is one street north of Lawndale. So I'm pretty familiar with the Lawndale stop sign also. I've been here like Bill for 40 years and raised my children here. And I have I agree with everything everybody said. I want to raise only one question because Bill raised a good one. Why take it down? The question I want to ask Holly is that the scientific surveys, if they don't support a stop sign at Lawndale, they won't support any of the stop signs on Vincetta because all the traffic that goes through there, or most of it, a lot of it, some of it turns like I do and like Bill does and like Angela does, that we turn off once we hit Lawndale. But so there's less traffic that goes through Greenleaf and Cedar Hill all the way to Susan Friends' house. So if the surveys statistics don't support Lawndale. They don't support any traffic signs. But I agree they ought to be there just to slow people down coming off of Woodward, if for no other reason. Oh, one more reason. Oh, I've worried since I've been here, and probably Bill too, our children are growing up and going away. The neighborhood became unaffordable to young families for a while, and 2008 hit, and a lot of new families moved in, and I see a lot of young children, infants to toddlers, to my granddaughter who lives on the opposite side of Vincetta from me, who crosses that street. And there are more children now than there have been in 40 years. Why allow traffic to go through there? It's just not logical. I don't care what the science says. There's no logic to it. That's all.
Great, thanks, James.
Thank you, James. All right, let's see. Next we have Susan and George Frentz. I've allowed you to talk. You just need to unmute yourself.
Oh, thanks, Jennifer. And thanks everyone on this committee, and Holly especially for answering some of my questions in email as well. I agree with what's been said so far. The addition that I wanted was a stop sign actually put in the median. So I was happy to see your report that said, you know, you could put a stop or a yield sign placed within the median. So this stop sign would be right across from the stop sign that's already there on northbound Vincetta at Lawndale. And that way just give the driver a visual. I think Waze and other GPS are having folks zip through our neighborhood, but even as a resident, I can come flying off of Woodward and say, oh yeah, I'm in my friendly neighborhood now. It's child friendly, but not so much because of the speeding. But it helps me remember to slow down, stop at the stop sign, you know, take a deep breath, come on into the neighborhood. And I think it would help a lot of other folks too if they visually had a stop sign on each side of that corner as they are going northbound. That's it. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Susan. Okay, let's see. Next up, we have Ben Rowe. Ben, I allowed you to talk. You just need to unmute yourself.
Okay, good evening. Thank you. My name is Ben Rowe. I live at 1115 Vincetta Boulevard, and it's directly across the street from the Lawndale intersection. And I just had a couple questions or clarifications to make sure that what is being recommended by the staff is understood by the residents and everybody else in terms of where this stop sign is recommended to be placed at Greenleaf. I believe it's as you're traveling east and west across the median is where the stop sign is being recommended, not as you're traveling north and south on Vincetta on the left side of the road, as well as the Lawndale intersection. From what Susan was saying, is the request to put it on the left side in the median as you're traveling northbound on Lawndale, or is it if you're traveling southbound from Vincetta to Lawndale to put a stop sign or some sort of yield as a person is turning left and heading eastbound onto Lawndale? And also, if the stop sign at Lawndale northbound would be removed, is an additional traffic speed study going to be performed for the northbound traffic to get a basis for what has potentially changed with a removal of that stop sign? So I don't know if that's something that the staff could clarify in terms of the Greenleaf intersection, what is proposed there, but just wanted to ask that and see what was requested there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Next up, we have Rebecca Leanne. Rebecca, you should be allowed to talk. You just need to unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you. Yes, Mark and myself live at 1608 Vincetta, which is closer than to 12 Mile. We're at the Cedar Hill and Vincetta corner. And I guess we just wanted to echo, obviously, some other residents' comments that we would question why you would remove the Lawndale stop sign, given it's been there so long, as well as everyone has said, the studies are probably lower given we are in COVID, and why have an expense to remove something when it's already there. But in addition, I guess our concern would be is you remove more stop signs from Vincetta, you encourage people to speed. We do have 3 young children that play in our front yard all the time. And I will tell you, from the stop sign to Greenleaf to 12 Mile, we see cars all the time in excess of 30 miles per hour. 2 years ago, we had a car come up onto our lawn and hit a huge oak tree. Fortunately, it was in the wee hours of the morning and no one was in our yard, but that would be our concern, is you reduce the number of stop signs. And to me, whether there's 5 cars, 500, 1,500, you're encouraging them to speed. So we would ask that to be considered as well.
Thank you, Rebecca. So that's everybody that wanted to speak, but Bill Wolf and James Carnegie did re-raise their hands. Did you want to bring them again, Dan?
Not at this time, yeah. I think we got a good feel for what the residents want us to discuss. Holly, could you maybe go to the map view and kind of clarify the recommendations as you have them? I think it's the page up from here that shows the existing. Yeah, that one. Could you take a quick second, Hallie, and explain what is being proposed?
Yeah, that was a really great comment that I didn't even consider. People might misinterpret how I had said that, so I'm really glad that a couple people brought that up. So Jennifer has the mouse, so I'll try. Hopefully, she can kind of hover where we're talking. So at the Greenleaf intersection, the stop signs would be in the median for eastbound and westbound traffic. There's already signs, for northbound, southbound on Vincetta. There's signs for eastbound, westbound, at the outside edges of Vincetta for Greenleaf traffic. But within the median, because it's such a wide median and it's an all-way stop, the additional stop signs would be added just to reinforce that that's an all-way stop. I'm not recommending that we double up stop signs anywhere that's not city policy. And it's a really dangerous precedent to set. You start doing that, and then everyone wants 2 stop signs on their street, and then they want flashing lights. You know what I mean? It's like the stop signs are there, and there's a law that tells you need to stop. If there was some sort of sight distance issue where people maybe had a hard time seeing the stop sign because there was a huge tree in the way, for example, so you don't see it till the last minute, that might be a scenario where you look at that, but I don't think we have any situation like that here where a double stop sign would ever be recommended.
Great, thank you. In the other view also had the showed the stop sign on green and I'm sorry, let me open it up so I know what I'm talking about again. The one on Lawndale, and that one's your recommendation is to remove that, and it seemed like all of the respondents wanted to see that stay. Do you have any comments to refute why you want to take that out?
Well, it's not so much that I want it gone or anything. I'm going based off the recommendations of the Michigan manual. And one thing I didn't put in my write-up, and I probably should have, is that stop signs specifically shall not be used for speed control. It's in big, bold letters in the Michigan manual. You never use them to try and slow people down or to calm traffic in a neighborhood. The purpose is to stop traffic for some other movement going on at that intersection. And so, the common thread in the conversation was, we need these stop signs here because they're going to slow people down. And maybe they will. Like people had said, they're coming off Woodward, which is a high-speed street, and entering a neighborhood. Maybe it does trigger a brain reaction and tell people that I'm in a neighborhood, maybe I'll slow down now. I'm going based off of what engineering practice tells me to do. If there's no warrant for a stop sign somewhere, if I saw that there was a rear end accident there because someone probably wasn't expecting a stop sign there, it makes me think, why was it there? And I couldn't find, anything in our history, like somebody had said, it's been there for a really, really long time. I don't have traffic meeting minutes that go back 40 years or so to tell me exactly why the decision was made. It may have just been kind of a gut feeling thing. we see that all the time in our city. So.
Well, I can go back 15 years with my experience. You know, I don't recall this coming up in front of us before, but are there any questions for Holly from the committee on this item?
I have a question. I can agree with all the comments from, I live not far from here, and I drive through that intersection twice a day. The only argument that makes any sense for removing that is what you said, which is the code that says don't use them for speed reduction. If I guess my question would be, is it normal practice to proactively remove those stop signs that don't meet the criteria, or could we take that one recommendation off and approve or vote to support the rest?
Yeah, I mean, you're welcome to kind of make whatever recommendation you want with this one. Again, it's just based on the warrants for a stop sign. We don't go out looking for stop signs to get rid of, for sure. But once I study something, I kind of have to tell you what I found.
Sure.
You know, if you want to say keep that stop sign there, it's not a safety hazard. You know, hopefully we won't have any more rear end accidents there. You know, I'm not going to fight you on it. I'm just presenting what we have here for the from the Michigan manual.
Thanks, Blaine. Any other questions from the committee?
I don't have any questions, but I'll make a motion if you're ready for someone to do that.
Certainly, go ahead.
I'll move to adopt this staff recommendation with the caveat to keep the stop sign and stop bar for northbound Vincetta at Lawndale.
I'll second that.
Second.
I have a motion by Amanda in support by Blaine to take staff recommendations with the caveat of leaving the stop sign at Lawndale and the stop bar at Lawndale. Is that correct?
Correct.
Sorry, yes, I was trying to unmute myself. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, is there any other discussion, further discussion rather, on this motion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay, Tom Allen.
We have one nay and all the rest are ayes. Great. Thank you, guys. And thanks to all the residents that came out and spoke to this evening. That would move us on to, I believe it's 6B, request to install speed bumps on Hoffman Avenue between 10 Mile and East Hudson Avenue. Holly?
We received a request from Jennifer and Paul Bastian of 1118 Hoffman to install speed bumps on Hoffman from between 10 Mile and East Hudson. They've noticed increased speeding on the street since moving in a couple of years ago, accidents and near misses, and also the death of a cat in the roadway. They noted that Hoffman is a major thoroughfare to get to I-696. So Hoffman is a 27-foot wide local road consisting of composite pavement from Lincoln Avenue to south of Hudson, and then concrete pavement from that point down to Dondero, and then asphalt pavement again from Dondero down to 10 Mile Road, or the service drive. There is one stop sign, which is at East Hudson, along that corridor between Lincoln and 10 Mile, and parking is allowed on both sides of the street. The 3-year accident report shows no recorded crashes along the roadway. We took measurements using the TIA in January. At 2 locations, we did one between Lincoln and Dondero, and then another count between Dondero and 10 Mile. And the results are shown in the table here. 85th percentile speed is well within the acceptable range for a 25 mile per hour street. And the volume of traffic is at the low end for a residential street, falling in that 0 to 600 vehicles per day window. So the data does not suggest that there's a speed or a volume issue on the street. So no changes are recommended at this time. It should be noted that the study was conducted during the COVID-19 pandemic. So when traffic volumes eventually return to normal, This could potentially be studied again in the future if requested by residents. So our staff recommendation is to deny the request for installation of speed bumps on Hoffman.
Thank you, Holly. Is there any initial questions for Holly from the committee? Hearing no button. Do you have any hands raised, Jennifer?
Let me take a look here. No, I do not have any hands raised for this item.
So this would be the time if someone is in the virtual audience that wanted to speak on the speed bump for Hoffman. So we're not seeing anybody. I'm going to close public comment on this particular item and move it to the committee for a motion or further discussion from anybody.
This is Tom Allen. I move we adopt the staff recommendations.
We have a motion by Tom. Is there support?
I'll support.
We have support. I think that was Mr. Kowalski.
Yep.
And we have a motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is unanimous. Thank you, guys. This would quickly move us on to 6C, AMPWT Neighborhood Survey Results. What's that acronym for, Holly?
It's slang in our office, AMPWIT. It's the Albert, Merrill, Parker, Warwick, Trafford neighborhood.
Okay.
Talk about it so much that we've given it the shorthand version. Sorry, we probably should have changed that for the official minutes here. But anyway, so since 2018, the city has been studying the streets south of 13 Mile and west of Woodward, again at Albert, Merrill, Parker, Warwick, and Trafford, related to traffic issues. So this is kind of a long-standing issue we've been discussing here at the Traffic Committee. So I'm going to summarize things in sort of a brief history and then get into the meat of the study that we did. So in 2018, we started to work with residents on Parker Avenue regarding their volume of traffic and speeding and non-residential parking on their street. And to get a better understanding of the traffic in the entire neighborhood, we ended up studying all 5 streets simultaneously in the spring of 2018. And so the image here is the snapshot of the data that we captured at that time. So each of the streets are shown there. Woodward is on the right-hand side, Coolidge is on the left, North is up. And then we show the volume of traffic in the west and the east direction for each street. It might be tiny on your screen, depending on the size of your screen, but off to the right, it also shows you the 85th percentile speed, the total vehicle count, which would be the westbound and eastbound traffic added together. And then also roughly the number of vehicles that we might expect to see on streets like this if there wasn't a ton of cut-through traffic, just for comparison's sake. So you can probably just keep that image up. I'll go through the rest at the moment. So based on the collected data, there are significantly more vehicles traveling these streets than would be expected to be generated by the residents alone. And some streets do also have speeding issues. In the winter of 2019, the Traffic Committee recommended having a workshop with the neighborhood, and we held that on March 26th of 2019. At the workshop, most of the residents had been in favor of doing a partial road closure, and that would be a closure that separates the businesses on Woodward from the residential neighborhoods. So staff at that time recommended setting up a temporary barrier to test this option and give residents a feel for it. And we decided to do that after Dream Cruise was over and once school was back in session. So the barricades and signage were placed just west of the public alley off of Woodward on these 5 streets in October through November of 2019. And after they had been in place for many weeks, the city measured the traffic speeds and the volumes to evaluate the effect of installing these partial road closures. And then we got rid of them for the winter. We sent a letter to the neighborhood to let them know what we found and to get their feedback. We met with the residents after that in January, and we discussed the results of the partial road closures study. Traffic data was presented, and then residents had time to give their feedback. And the data that we collected showed that while the barriers were up, there was a reduction in overall traffic. and also a reduction in speeding. At the meeting, no formal decision was made to install any type of permanent closure or signage at that time. We simply presented the information, and then we encouraged residents, if they wanted to move forward, to request a petition from the city. And then we really never heard anything for the rest of 2020 until the fall. Somebody from Merrill had called, again, complaining about traffic issues, cut-throughs, and speed. And they had ultimately proposed allowing on-street parking on both sides of the road to help calm traffic and slow vehicles down. Ultimately, the City Commission rejected that recommendation and instead directed staff to provide various options to help with traffic speeding and volume issues on Merrill. So we came up with potential options at our last November traffic meeting and then presented those to the Commission in December. The Commission had directed staff to take, of all the solutions we came up with, to present only the ones that we deemed viable that would actually help and solve some traffic issues to the residents in the form of a survey. So we sent out a letter and prepared a survey online for residents to give us their feedback. They also directed staff to communicate our concerns with Beaumont Hospital officials to request their staff to avoid local streets for hospital access. And Beaumont did reach out to their employees and send like an all-employee email in January. So staff created the online survey of traffic calming options, and that was available to residents from January 5th until February 15th. And the results and recommendations are something I'll go over here in a minute. Overall, we had a pretty good response rate. We're estimating about 33% of the residents that were notified actually provided a response. So that was pretty good feedback, I thought. And it was a really nice distribution of gender, male and female, people who had lived on the street like for different times. That was really well distributed as well. And we heard from pretty much every street in strong numbers. So I feel good saying that at least the results we got are representative of the neighborhood. Okay, so we can probably move to page 9 now. This first page is a general summary of the preliminary questions that we asked in the survey. So the first box here is how many responses we heard from each street. And then the graph next to it kind of shows that as a percentage of how many we may have heard on that street. So, it looks like we had really good representation on all the streets except Albert, although I think that might be a little bit skewed because several people marked themselves as like other, and I think they're just Coolidge addresses that use Albert. So I think that's skewed. I think we heard more from Albert than is shown here. We also asked how many drivers were in each household. That didn't really give us any super useful information. We still generally represented the same proportion of residents per street in the question. The fourth chart here, though, I think is telling. It asked directly, do you think that you have a traffic problem on your street? And we got pretty strong responses on that. It was 71% overall said, yes, there is a problem. And you can kind of see how they were distributed amongst the different streets. But seems to be a consistent thread, and people probably want some sort of solution here. And then the last chart, Beaumont had asked us, since they had sent out an employee communication, could we ask if people actually noticed a difference, if it helped? We didn't get a great response on that, but some people had said that they noticed lower traffic or slower traffic after Beaumont sent out that email. So Beaumont said, that's great. They'll continue to send that probably a couple times a year to their employees just as a cyclical thing. The next page is just a map that shows, where we heard from different residents. So again, it's pretty nicely distributed. We heard from both sides of Coolidge and got a lot of feedback that way. Okay, so now we'll get into the actual solutions that we presented. The first solution was the simplest, and it was some sort of signage installation to help cut down traffic on streets. So we gave this in the survey, we gave 4 options here and noted that if we did any signage option, we would have to do it on all 5 streets together. Otherwise, you eliminate turns on one street, people are just going to go to the next street. So we gave the option of basically don't turn onto these streets from Woodward during the morning hours. Do not turn onto these streets from Coolidge during the afternoon hours. Do both of those things or do none of those things. And it was a very even split. Basically, 50% said, I don't want any of these signs to be installed. And then the other 50% roughly had said, I want some variant of signage to be installed here. The first chart is all the streets combined, representative as a whole. And then I broke it down by street to see if there was any major difference. There really wasn't anything too significant there, with the exception of maybe Albert. There was probably more people in favor of installing signs than the other streets. On the next sheet, we also asked on all these different options how strongly they felt about it. You know, were they really opposed to it, really for it, or kind of somewhere in the middle? So overall, 50% of respondents, like I said, didn't want to see any restrictive signage installed at either end, while about 32% wished to see signage at both ends of the block. And when looking at the level of interest responses, we had roughly the same amount of residents who were opposed as those that were in favor. Many of the resident comments, they could kind of type in their own thoughts at the end of each question. And they primarily centered around accessibility to their homes. So residents wanted the ability to ignore the signs so that they could get to their house. But of course, there's really not a systematic way for the police to enforce something like that. Several residents also noted that we should just do no through traffic signs, but we've discussed this multiple times in the past, but the option really isn't something we're considering because it's really difficult to enforce and often doesn't deter cut-through traffic at all. Several residents noted that people are still going to ignore the signs, and that was part of the reason why they said, don't do this, it's not going to solve anything. So that was solution one. The next option that we presented had to do with traffic calming. And so we asked residents if they'd be in favor of installing either bump outs or like pedestrian refuge islands to help calm traffic on their street. So this isn't something that's necessarily going to decrease volume on these streets. It's not going to help with cut through traffic, but it can definitely help with speeding issues on a street. So the first chart there just shows, you know, who was in favor of having some sort of traffic calming involved. Residents on Trafford and Albert were the most in favor of this option, but only 50% were in favor. We also noted that the speed was actually measured to be the highest on Trafford and on Merrill. We had 31 miles per hour and 30 miles per hour. So those are the streets where you might see the biggest impact from doing some sort of traffic calming. The other streets were measured to be about 27 to 28 miles per hour. So I don't mind like throwing those off the list. So I just looked at those three streets that I narrowed it down to see level of interest. How interested were the residents in doing this? And it looks like Trafford might be the only street where the option has a somewhat fair preference. And the biggest resident concern there seemed to be around loss of parking if we did install some sort of island. Okay, third option was to do a partial road closure permanently west of the Woodward businesses. So we asked about installing basically the pilot that we had tested out in 2019, doing something permanent with like curb and gutter, so that people could come westbound on the street but would not be able, wait, did I say that right? No, people could, I'm sorry, exit eastbound off onto Woodward but could not enter from Woodward. So if installed, this is something we would have to do in all 5 streets to avoid pushing traffic to the adjacent streets. So you can see the distribution here of who was in favor, who wasn't. Overall, it was 38% that were for it. Trafford seemed to be very much against that, which I get because there's not really a great way to get to Trafford otherwise. We observed that many drivers ignored these temporary closures when we installed them in 2019 and still ended up driving westbound on the streets anyways. So who knows that it will really solve a huge portion of the problem. And then we also looked at, again, that level of interest. How strongly do people feel about this option? 52% were strongly opposed to it. Only 32% were in favor or highly in favor of the option. So based on resident comments, many people were strongly opposed to the option. And again, it's due to that inconvenience factor of having to get to their house from a different route. So those were the three options we presented to everybody. We had a fourth option that we limited only to residents on Merrill. And this has to do with speed humps. So the city has not approved installation of speed humps on any street in Royal Oak in the past. We thought Merrill might warrant some special consideration here because the 85th percentile speed is at 30 miles per hour, which is very high for a residential street. And the traffic volume is extremely high at over 2,200 vehicles per day. Normally on a residential street, the very high end would be 1,800 vehicles per day. So we are out there in terms of volume. Only residents that were responding from Merrill were asked about the speed hump preference, and there was a 50-50 split in opinion on that. 19 residents were in favor of it, and 19 residents were against, when it was just a simple question of do you want it or do you not want it. But then when we asked in terms of level of interest, it showed that there was actually more residents in favor or I guess not opposed to it, as opposed to the 50-50 split. So 56 were highly favored, 14% were in favor. So that seems like a viable option there. Okay, I need some water. So that's all the data. And I'll just go into the summary and kind of the recommendations that we came up with as a staff. So installing the do not enter or the no turn signage, definitely the easiest and the most cost-effective option here. Also the easiest to remove if future studies show that there was some sort of problem or the neighborhood came out against it strongly. It should be noted that drivers will likely still disobey the signs if they do get installed. Respondents were roughly split in half whether to install these or not. And without more confidence that they would actually help solve the issue, we are not recommending installing the prohibitive signage on any of these streets. Traffic calming using a bump out or pedestrian island is recommended for Trafford Avenue only. It was the street with the highest speed measurements at 31 miles per hour, and it also had the most people in favor of an installation. There could be some loss of available on-street parking. I did do a very, very rough design for it, and I think I can fit these traffic calming islands close to the business end and then close to the Coolidge end so that none of these would be within, there's a permit parking zone there for all the residential houses. So I think I can fit them and not take away any residential parking and still make it work. So, and I know that was a lot of people's concern with Trafford because the parking is already limited there for them. Installing a half road closure to prevent westbound traffic on each street would be a relatively expensive solution and definitely not something we could easily just remove if it became problematic. During the pilot study in 2019, we observed that many drivers ignored the partial closures and still drove westbound. And overall, 63% of residents were opposed to this option. So without more significant buy-in from the neighborhood, this solution is not recommended either. Merrill residents were generally in favor of installing speed humps. While these are not recommended for wide installation around the city, this street demonstrates excessive volume and speed issues. So staff recommends setting a threshold of greater than 2,000 vehicles per day and an 85th percentile speed of 30 miles per hour or higher before we would even consider speed humps on any residential street, and to never authorize them on any of the major roads. So Merrill is scheduled for concrete street repairs this summer. So we could potentially look at doing adding speed humps to that contract this summer. So our ultimate recommendations here are to design and install traffic calming options on Trafford Avenue to be added by contract modification to a 2021 road project. And maybe somebody would want to add the caveat that we don't take away any residential parking spaces. Estimated cost, this is a hard one to gauge, but I roughed it in at $8,000. Initial speed humps, install speed humps on Merrill Avenue as part of our 2021 street repair project at an estimated cost of $6,000. And then because we have a road millage here that helps with local road issues, I'm recommending that we fund these using that local road fund rather than billing this to the residents. So total estimated cost here would be $14,000. I'm gonna take a
Wow,
break.
great, thanks, Holly. I know, if you want to take a break and get a glass of water, there you go. I imagine there's some questions that that the folks on the committee have. Just a compliment from me. A great job with doing this. I know it's been a challenge to pull this information together, and I think this is presented in a very clear and a good format. I think you guys did a great job on it. The problem has been there for quite a while, and because of the expansion in Beaumont, we're seeing it go up, and it really is the probably the worst area I can think of in the city for cut through, just because of the location of the streets between Woodward and Coolidge and the big business right there, and it's just a convenient way for traffic to get through back up. So the one thing that struck me, I guess, you know, in the survey situation where you try to get everybody's input, it's like on the signage, people are almost split. 50-50 was one of the notes I took, that, you know, don't do it, it's not going to make any difference, but it's the easiest way to try to correct things. And the last thing I'll say is, when we try to do something like this on the south end, over by the streets around Mohawk that come off 696, we put temporary blockades up there too, and people would move them and drive around them. There is some precedent in that area where there are some signs existing where it's no through traffic, and there was some good enforcement on that too. I got pulled over one time for driving through that area where I didn't pull into a residence street, and I went all the way to Lincoln Avenue. So I'm more open to the idea of signage and spot enforcement. I know it's difficult to do, but it's been done. And I'd like to hear comments from the rest of the committee on this report too. I think some very good work done here.
This is Amanda. I raised my hand, but I wasn't sure if I should wait to be called on or just talk.
Yeah, just fire away, guys.
Okay. I guess I had a question for Holly, if she had some water and was able to just address this general question. So, you know, I've been on the committee for a while now, maybe 4 or 5 years, and I'm familiar with this area. I know that I've been on the committee when this issue has come before us the last 2 years. And so, you know, I totally agree with Dan. The amount of work here and the quality of work is really great. And I thank everyone, you know, for their efforts. As far as the staff recommendation, you know, does engineering view this as, you know, this is the recommendation and then the matter would be considered closed if the city commission, you know, approves or disapproves whatever we're going to do today? Or is this matter still going to be looked at and like tinkered with down the line? I guess I'm just trying to get a sense of the recommendation and, you know, where we would go from here if this group voted to approve the recommendation.
That's a great question, and something I kind of struggled with too, is like the data that we got didn't show me a clear answer here to solve the neighborhood problems. It gave me a couple of solutions to improve the neighborhood. So I grabbed those, figured we can at least make a start here, help a couple of streets, both streets, by the way, that had the worst speeding, and Merrill had the worst cut through. I don't know that this issue is ever going to go away until we do something drastic. And even then, it probably still will come back because the residents won't be happy with whatever that drastic change is. Even when we did the pilot study, we had so much negative feedback. It's really hard for some people to get to their houses. It added 10 minutes to their commute for some people to go all the way around and come in the other way. So yeah, I don't know that this is ever fully going away, but I hope that this is a solid improvement, I guess, something that really will have meaningful change out there.
This is Tom Allen. Is it possible to install temporary speed humps? Is that possible?
Yes, they do exist, and they're kind of nice because you can take them out in the winter so that snow plows don't damage something that you nicely paved, and then it gets ruined over just a couple years. The issue with that is making sure DPS can buy into that. I know Ferndale doesn't do them, and it's because for them it's too much work for their DPS to put them in all over town, but they have 20 or more speed humps. Here, because we're kind of setting a threshold, I really don't know that any other street in Royal Oak meets that criteria of 30 miles per hour and over, I think it was 2,000 vehicles per day. So if we're only talking 2 or 3 speed humps for DPS to do each year, that might be more reasonable, but something I still need to get buy-in on whether they would be permanent or temporary.
Well, I'd be in favor of this if the speed humps were temporary.
Thanks, Tom. And that actually was one of the questions that popped into my mind too, as Tom said that, because on your recommendations, what I like about it is that you're kind of trying different things on different streets. And if the calming on traffic did some good and we got good feedback on it and it looked like it improved things in the future, and the speed bumps did the opposite in the other streets where we just put signs or something like that, it almost looks like a good way to test things out when you're doing different things on different streets. You only get that kind of feedback when if we did all 4 streets with speed bumps, I'm not sure we'd learn a lot, but there really is no magic fix, and there never will be here. And I like trying something, and this does try something. I think the idea of a temporary speed hump with the criteria that you put forward, Holly, that it meets certain thresholds, and if it was, a temporary one, so that if it met with huge opposition and didn't improve the situation, they could just be pulled out. That is a good idea too. Is this something that we're opening up public comment for on this one too? I kind of skipped over that. I'm seeing nods, heads. Do you want to see if there's any hands raised and get some comments from the public?
Sure, no problem. Yeah, let me take a look at the attendee list here. Yep, we do have a few people that want to speak on this issue. The first person is Stephanie Bald. Stephanie, I allowed you to talk. You just need to unmute yourself.
Hi, my name is Stephanie. I live on Merrill in the cooperative apartments. I do have an 11-year-old, so there was a lot of concern for me about the speed as well and the traffic flow. I honestly like the idea of the removal of the speed bumps because the traffic flow is a lot lower during the winter season. I was actually in for the bump outs where the street became wavy, but I like this idea a little bit better. Honestly, it does depends on like how fast they're going, because people, once they go right across Woodward, they just keep going. They don't slow down or anything like that. Whereas the people that are turning from Woodward going south to go right, they're a little bit slower. because I've actually almost gotten hit walking across the street and walking my dog with my daughter. Because people don't pay attention at that crossover to go straight from Woodward at the turnaround. So, but I like the bump out idea if they're removable, because a lot of people don't already come during the winter time. But the traffic is still the same with Beaumont and their notification. A lot of trucks and like trailers travel down the road as well, and you hear it and it's really loud and it's scary almost. So that's just my concern, because I have a child and there's 3 kids across the street from me as well. But that's my input on that piece.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Kara Sokol. Kara, I allowed you to talk. You just need to unmute yourself.
Hello, thank you. I am a homeowner on Merrill. I'm at 3336 Merrill, and I'm here with the person I live with. And we really just want to express our strong support for the findings here and the recommendations from the city. Particularly thanks to Holly for such a thorough report and all of the work that you've all put in to studying the streets here. I've been a homeowner here for about 5 years, and I don't have kids, so we haven't really noticed as much of the problem. I do see the problems with the cut through and the speed at times, but really I didn't have any issues until we did the temporary trial last year with the one-way traffic and found ourselves getting blocked trying to exit and turn onto Woodward by people turning in and ignoring the blockhead there. So I was really interested to see what was going to come from the findings, and I can tell a lot of work and thought's been put into it, and we're 100% supportive. Temporary speed humps, permanent speed humps, even if the answer ends up being no speed humps, that's great. I think that the work has proved to have really good results. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Kara. Okay, next we have Mike R. Mike, you just need to unmute yourself.
Good evening. It's Mike Rapinski, 3152 Parker. Again, thank you to the committee, to Holly for all the work that goes into this. I know this is quite an endeavor. I echo the previous speaker's comment about trucks. We get a lot of big trucks, waste trucks coming down Parker. And I want to address one thing really quick before I forget. Based on your respondents and the graphs and everything that you had, and you showed a map of the people that responded on Parker as a percentage of residents. If you look at between Coolidge and Woodward, just about every house that's occupied responded. Some of those houses are rentals. Some of those houses have been vacant for a while. There's one under construction. So, they didn't respond. If you look at west of Coolidge, you had a lesser percentage of respondents. I think the problem exists mostly on where I live, between Coolidge and Woodward. And personally, I thought that the temporary barrier it didn't work like we wanted it to work, but it did help. I thought that perhaps a permanent barrier would have a different presentation and would give it a little bit more of a deterrent. But I can understand the dynamics of you got to do one, you got to do them all. Again, I think if you look at us, just isolate Woodward to Coolidge on all the streets, you might get a little bit different take as opposed to the entire streets going all the way to Webster. Again, the issue here is difficult. I have my coffee in the morning, look out my window, and I see big trucks coming down our street. Some of them excessive speeds. I know the numbers tell 28 miles an hour, 29 miles an hour. I can guarantee you they're faster than that. But in the bigger scheme of things, the signs again don't work. I can tell you, my neighbors west of Coolidge will tell you that those signs tell you not to turn at different times of the day. by the time somebody can read what time of the day they can't turn, they've already turned. I think this temporary speed bump, something that could be removed in the winter for the snow plows, is better than nothing. So don't exclude Parker and WROK and the other streets from that concept if that's the way you decide to go. And again, thank you all for the work on this.
Thank you. All right, next up we have Simon I. Simon, you just need to unmute yourself.
Hi, sorry, I'm speaking for Simon. We're both here. My name is Kim. We live on Trafford. I'm the homeowner. And just first off, I don't want to take too much of your time up. I appreciate all the time and effort gone to the study. Much like everyone else has said, I just want to echo the same thanks and gratitude. I live between Woodward and Coolidge, and I'm actually very against the trial we did with the blocking off of Woodward. I know other people probably have different experiences, but I agree with what you guys, the conclusion you came to last time. I'm, excuse me, just wanted to thank you for the study and say I'm very for the calming effect, the calming of the traffic results that you guys suggested. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, one more person. We have Jennifer Viviano. Jennifer, you are allowed to talk. You just got to unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, we got you.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to also say thank you for this study. I actually live between Coolidge and Webster, and I live on the corner. And we actually have a lot of traffic that flies off of Webster onto our street. I also have small children as well as the people that live across the street. So we constantly have our kids going back and forth across the street. And when I, excuse me, when I was laid off over the past year, I did notice that people will fly off of Webster and they have got to be going 40 miles an hour all day long. I have called the police several times to have them come out and sit on my street. I did never see one. So I realize the study is more probably from Woodward to Coolidge. And we do have the no turn sign during the special hours off of Coolidge. I'm not sure that many people follow that either. But I just wanted to really voice my concern regarding people coming off of Webster, going 40 miles an hour off of my street. And it, like I said, it's mainly in the morning and probably rush hour times when they shouldn't be even turning on the street. And I also am not really opposed to the one-way street in between Woodward and Coolidge because I do turn onto my street off of Woodward every day, coming home from work and bringing my kids home from school. That's really it. But thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, let me just check if there's any other attendees. Oh, we do have one other person, Ursula Mortimer. Ursula, you're allowed to talk. You just need to unmute yourself.
Hi, I just want to thank you all for doing this study. And I just want to also, as with the last speaker, say that I live on Parker between Webster and Coolidge. And I've been living on the street for the last 20 years. And I also see the same problems where we often get people that are cutting through from Berkeley and Southfield, and they'll cut through Parker to get onto Coolidge. So, they are traveling quite fast, like at least 40 miles per hour. And we do have a lot of children on the street, and it's been a big concern over the years. And I just didn't want us to be forgotten because I know a lot of the focus has been between Coolidge and Woodward. But because a lot of traffic, I believe some of the problem is also that when traffic goes through Webster onto Coolidge, there's no easy way to just get onto Coolidge. There's a lot of traffic coming around that curve, and they're going quite fast. So I think a lot of people just find it a lot easier to cut through Parker, because we're right in the middle of Merrill and Warwick. And Merrill's a little bit closed off between Webster and Coolidge, because they have a huge sign that says "Do not enter." And you have to kind of turn around. So it's a lot easier for them to come through Parker and to get onto Coolidge. And so I just wanted to kind of bring that information to the committee as well, to take into some consideration. Maybe there's some solutions for our street as well. So, that's what I just basically wanted to say.
You've never seen a speed survey on our street?
Yeah, and we have not ever seen a speed survey on our street.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ursula.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have another person that wanted to speak, Kathy Ferrando. Kathy, you just need to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Your committee has done a great job on our 5 streets, and I appreciate your work. In the survey, temporary speed bumps wasn't even mentioned as a possibility. And I just wanted to say I agree with Mike. I live at 3163 Parker Drive between Woodward and Coolidge, and the temporary speed bumps sound like a better idea than permanent structures being put in that would be cheaper than that. So if that is an option that we can use, I'd support that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Okay, I think that might be it. I'm just going to double check here. Okay, yep, that's everyone that wanted to speak.
Great, thanks, Jennifer. All right, bringing it back to the committee for more discussion and motions.
Well, this is Tom Allen. I'll make a motion. I move we adopt the staff's recommendation with one change, make the speed humps temporary and see how it goes, and then roll it out to other streets.
Okay, we have a motion by Tom. Is there support?
This is Rick Karlowski. I can support that.
Okay, we have a motion in support. Any more discussion?
Yeah, I think, okay, go ahead, Amanda.
I'm sorry, Tom. I just recall when Holly went through the recommendations, I believe she thought it may be prudent to add a caveat for that first item, design and install traffic calming on Trafford. I believe Holly indicated with a carve out for preserving as much parking as possible for the residents on that street. So I don't know if that's something we could consider adding to the pending motion, or if perhaps my memory of what Holly had suggested is inaccurate. Someone can point that out.
That's what I recall as well. On the first item in the staff recommendations for the traffic calm on Trafford was to, if we can put a note in there saying preserving as much parking in the consideration of the design of that. Would that be okay to the motion maker and the seconder as an amendment to that motion?
It's okay with me. This is Tom Allen.
Rick Karlowski, I'll support that as well.
Okay, thanks for bringing that up, Amanda. Tom, did you want to make further comments on this motion too before Amanda spoke up?
No, but I think we need to do something on this area. It just keeps coming up.
Yep.
And so I would suggest that we install those speed humps forthwith and see how it goes. And then, maybe even revisit this at the next traffic committee meeting to see if we can't get this neighborhood under control.
I think this is a good step by this committee going with staff recommendations, and it does try at least two different things, and if it's popular and successful, I think your comment, Tom, about rolling it out further is good, and hopefully maybe DPS will find some method of installing a temporary, and that was part of this motion too, that these speed humps on Merrill would be of a temporary variety, I believe too. Is that correct, Tom?
I think we should probably say removable.
Okay.
So it doesn't sound like they're only going to be there for a year and we get rid of them forever.
Sounds good. So that would be install removable speed humps.
Yeah, this is Tom Allen. I'm okay with that.
Okay. Any other discussion on this motion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Great, motion passes unanimously. On to another big topic, 6D, presentation of options for Delamere Boulevard. Holly?
The City Commission has directed staff to prepare parallel on-street parking options for Delamere Boulevard and to invite the adjacent property owners to join and comment. So I'll go over a brief summary of the concerns dealing with Delamere Boulevard that we discussed at our last meeting, and then also a presentation of the parking options that we came up with. So engineering was planning to resurface the half-mile segment of Delamere from Normandy to 14 Mile this summer as part of our local road millage program. The road is classified as a major road and is considered a major collector and is signed for 25 miles per hour. The corridor has a variety of light industrial uses with a residential neighborhood to the east, as well as Normandy Oaks Park. During design, we noticed many paved parking areas exist within the city's right-of-way. Many of them are in poor condition. Of the 31 business properties, 19 of them have paved parking areas within the right-of-way. There's no license agreements on file for use of the public right-of-way for any of these parking areas. Each of the 31 properties does have paved space on site for parking, though it is not clear which businesses have enough space to comply with the zoning ordinance for on-site parking. And without the current floor plans and site plans for each property, the planning division wasn't able to determine who could fit it and who could not. So these paved areas in the public right-of-way allow for loading zones and for customer parking for the private use of businesses at the expense of driver, pedestrian, and bicyclist safety. With no license agreements in place, the city is liable for these paved areas. And additionally, the paved areas do add unnecessary and excessive stormwater runoff. If we converted all of these parking areas to grass, we would remove approximately 26% of the hard surface within the right-of-way. Staff proposes a project that would include milling and resurfacing the asphalt roadway, removing all unapproved paving, installing full-height curbs, installing traffic calming islands or bump outs to help with traffic calming, to create new concrete driveway approaches to the private parking lots and any overhead garage doors that exist, planting grass and trees, and installing bike route signage and striping sharrows or the shared lane markings on the road. The rehab project is estimated to cost approximately $700,000, and we would propose to fund it using road millage dollars for about $400,000, and then CDBG funding for an additional $300,000. So the 5-year accident history along the corridor, we found 3 different crashes, and I summarized them here. The first 2 on the list could potentially be related to site distance issues, but I can't say that with certainty. So at Samoset in 2017, a westbound vehicle had failed to yield to a southbound vehicle on Delamere. And again, at Samoset in 2018, a westbound vehicle failed to yield to a northbound vehicle on Delamere. The third accident was a pretty simple rear end crash. Someone was waiting to turn left and somebody rear-ended that driver. We requested traffic measurements from the TIA for speed and traffic volume, and those are measured on February 24th to the 26th. So we measured them north of Nakota and south of Nakota mid-block to try and get a reading not too close to any stop signs. The 85th percentile speed is a little bit high for the corridor. Typically up to 27 miles per hour is something that we would consider normal and fine. We ticked a little bit higher than that on one of the readings there at 28 miles per hour. The volume of traffic is within the intermediate range for a collector street, 2870 to 3940 vehicles per day. I'll also note that this study was done during the COVID-19 pandemic, so that might not be fully representative of typical traffic conditions out there. It is difficult to determine how many vehicles could park in these currently paved areas. Most of them are not striped, but we kind of guesstimated around 120 vehicles. Using aerial imagery, we came up with the following number of vehicles that were parked in the public right-of-way for the past, from 2015 through 2020. Although the 2020 values were on a Saturday, so I don't know that we should pay too much attention to those, but I kept them there anyways, just for information. So each of them are done on weekdays and kind of shows the parking per block and then the total number of cars that were parked. And again, this is just parking in the right-of-way in those paved areas. So obviously, definitely not a comprehensive parking study, but it's just kind of gives a little bit of an illustration of the parking usage on Delamere. Staff has evaluated Delamere to see if on-street parallel parking could be added by restriping the roadway without the excessive cost of actually widening the pavement. So parallel parking is possible to install on one side of the street and still maintain one lane of traffic in each direction. We do have possible configurations, which maybe it makes sense to flip to those now, Jen. But traffic lane widths would range from 10 to 11 feet wide with one 7.5-foot parking lane for parallel parking. Considering the daily traffic and the truck volume on the street, we would be following MDOT standards of meeting that 10-foot minimum lane width or wider in some cases. So the parking areas take into account truck turning movements into driveways and also the proximity to crosswalks and intersections. And intermediate semi-trailer is what we used for all the turning movement considerations. Steve in our office did this and did a really nice job putting it all together. So he used a WB50, which is that intermediate semi-trailer. We also used a little bit larger vehicle, the interstate semi-trailer, WB67, for a couple of the addresses because we did see those really large trucks at a couple spots. So we changed the turning radius for those addresses as well. And certainly if this project moves forward, we'll actually figure out what kind of deliveries these businesses take and we can kind of tailor a more specific design. But this is just kind of to get the general feel of what could fit out there and what would work with truck traffic. So the first option, which is shown here, we're calling option A. This would be having parallel parking on the east side of the road, which gives us 38 parking spaces. Option B is the parallel parking only on the west side of the road. That only gave us 20 spots, so that's probably not the option anyone would want to go with. So going kind of back up to option A, we did look at to see if there was like a third option with some sort of like chicane parking, where it alternated block by block, but ultimately the east side always had more parking than the west side. So we ended up sticking with the east side, except at the very north end by 14 Mile, we were able to fit 4 spots on the west side. So that's how we got the total of 38 spots. There also is a potential to install these center median islands towards the south end of the road. We didn't look at trying to squeeze those in as well along with the parallel parking. So just near the south end to help with some of the traffic calming. We could also potentially look at doing bump outs at the road intersections if we do move forward with parallel parking, just to help kind of protect that lane from vehicles that might be turning. So based on the historic parking usage, option A appears to be the most favorable option for the corridor, as it will provide 38 spaces in an area that appears to use around 14 to 49 spaces daily. Staff recommends removal of all paved parking areas within the public right-of-way and proceeding with option A. So that's ultimately our recommendation, is to allocate CDBG funding and road millage funding to improve Delamere by resurfacing the roadway, removing all pavement in the adjacent right-of-way except for driveway approaches and sidewalk, to include bike routes, signage, and sharrows, restore the public right-of-way with seed, sod, and trees, to install traffic calming measures along the route, to install signage and striping for parallel street parking, primarily on the east side of the road, as outlined in option A. So that's kind of all I wanted to say on the topic. I've been talking with Jim Razor, who's represented quite a few people or properties, businesses along the route here. I know he has a presentation he'd also like to give with another alternate for parking here. So once we kind of get through any preliminary questions, it might be best to give him a few minutes to speak to avoid any, I guess, redundancy, if other people are commenting on the same thing.
Great, thank you, Holly. Are there any initial questions from the committee for Holly at this time? Not hearing anybody. I think it's a good idea to let Mr. Razor speak first. Try to limit it to about a 6 to 7 minute dissertation or so, just to keep this moving along. And so the rest of the attendees in the virtual audience can get the whole picture of what's possible here. So Jennifer, if you can find Mr. Razor's hand and allow him to speak at this time.
Sure, I just brought him in.
Thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Jim Razor, 201 East 4th, downtown Royal Oak. I first of all want to thank you very much. I appreciate your hard work. I know you saw this before. When you saw it before, you rejected the plan, and I think there's a better option for you today than a thumbs up or a thumbs down. With the schematic on the roadway up in front of you to look at, I want you to look, please, at all of those red spots. And all of those red spots are 120 parking spaces that the city engineer is asking you to remove. And all of those are linked to businesses which have been employing Royal Oak residents for the last 70 years. And that's how long those spaces have been there with no objection by the city. So I want you to imagine 3 generations of Royal Oakers working in that business, because some of my clients are the grandchildren of the original founders of those businesses, and all the goods and services that those businesses provide, like fire defense, that almost all of our commercial people in Royal Oak use to keep us all safe. And the reason that those parking spaces are so important to those businesses is that they have dangerous and dirty industrial uses in the back. So when you have people parking in their lots instead of parking in the front, they're going to come in an industrial entrance and not the front. They're going to have forklifts and trucks and other things that are going to cause them a problem. There are also some transitional elements of this neighborhood. Some of them are 2 gyms which have opened up, which fill up all of these parking spots in the morning and the evening. This is not a corridor where this parking has laid fallow. This is a working, eclectic, cool neighborhood, and this neighborhood deserves your protection from really what we're talking about is gentrification. Now, the owners that I represent are quite willing to collaborate on change. They're not change adverse, they understand, and they've been working with the city to come up with a plan. They know that there's some compromise that would be required. And when this went to the city commission, the commission had concerns, and there was a robust discussion at the commission level. Those concerns were pedestrian safety, rainwater detention, lack of license agreements, and improvement in the parking in the right-of-way. The mayor even left the door open for licensing agreements being in place. And then this parallel parking issue came up for the first time at that meeting. And also, notably, and it's important to know that the planning staff indicated to the commission that CDBG requests could be modified after being submitted. So there really wasn't any sort of rush. At the conclusion of the meeting, the motion that passed the city commission was that this go to traffic commission with a proposal of parallel parking, and I'm quoting, or any other alternative replacement methods for some of this parking on Delamere. So what I did was I immediately prepared a counter offer to the engineer that was sent on February 17th. And I told the engineer that here were our thoughts. In terms of the right-of-way, there are no license agreements in place, but that doesn't mean that there can't be. We've tried to pull permits recently for fixing the right-of-way. The city won't give them to us. So we'll do licensing agreements. There's a precedent for licensing agreements on Campbell, where parking on the city property was necessary for the homeowners. They're easy to do. And that means that we would insure and stripe and take care of that right-of-way. And what that also means is that we would have a mechanism for insuring it and taking over the liability for the city, which was part of the concerns. We would put parking blocks out. When the sidewalks went in, no parking blocks were put up. We would put parking blocks there. In terms of rainwater mitigation, we proposed a plan from NOAC and Frous, which is the city's consulting engineer, which I'll show you in a moment, which converts about 42 spots to green space that retains rainwater. And also, I've asked you, my recommendation to you is to put this back with NOAC and Frous so they can put some polish on their plan so that they can come up with even more rainwater detention. We looked at the parallel parking option proposed by the engineer. We didn't feel that it was appropriate. We think it narrows the roadway, but moreover, it really cuts the spaces. It cuts 82 spaces out of this roadway. If you look at the master plan for the city of Royal Oak, the master plan is, what everybody spent a lot of time on, which is a blueprint for what we should be doing. In the master plan, and I don't know how many of you saw the letter that I sent, but one of the elements in the master plan is to, quote, ensure adequate parking is provided to meet the growing demand. And the next one is, as the city nears build-up, planning efforts should be focused on maintaining existing neighborhoods and promoting the viability of existing commercial centers. This is an existing commercial centers. The master plan also said large employers in the city should be encouraged to stay and provide jobs for residents. This parking will determine whether these businesses are able to continue doing business here. There is a pressure, if this parking is taken away, for these businesses to move somewhere else. And that's the last thing we need, is businesses hard hit by a pandemic to then have to decide it's in their best interest to move because their customers don't have any place to park. And that, I believe, is exactly what's going to happen if we violate the master plan. Now, like I said, we went to the city's consulting engineer. And the city's consulting engineer is NOAC and Frous. This is the engineering company that the city relies upon for advice when it has projects. And the lead engineer, Brad Bicknell, and I had a conversation, and Brad came up with this plan. He already had the drawings for the corridor. He's the one that would draw it up. And Ms. Caudell, if I could ask you to put that plan up, I would be
Which concept, number 1, 2, or 3?
1, 2, and 3 are the whole roadway, so it's in segments. But if Ms. Donahue has the segments that are laid over the satellite version, that might be more helpful in understanding. But I don't know if those are
I can pull those up. It'll just take me a moment.
And while Ms. Donahue is doing that, I like and respect Ms. Donahue. I think she's done a great job. She has limited funding, and she is the city engineer. However, I don't know that through this process, anybody asked the business owners, hey, what are you willing to pay for? and the business owners are willing to pay to maintain that right of way, insure it, stripe it, put parking blocks on it. So thank you. So this is the first section. I don't believe, well, it's really kind of hard to see. Maybe try the one that doesn't have the graphic on it, or can you zoom that one up a little bit? It's hard because I'm not in control of the presentation. Sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, the one without the graphic is a little light. I don't know if you can see it any better, but I can try to zoom in. That's not a problem. Let me.
Okay, can everybody see that?
Just gotta get to the.
So,
whoops, sorry. I had to get it up.
Thank you.
Screen mode.
Like I said, so you can see this is the south end of Delamere. And actually, I need you to zoom in on the bottom portion of it if you can.
Sure.
Can you just move that scroll down for me, Ms. Cudell?
Yep.
Oh, thank you so much. So as you can see, this is the start of the parking. The gray area is actually areas of parking that are turned into green infrastructure where we can plant trees, we can do streetlights, we can do other things. The parking is 45-degree angle. So the parking is just rearranged from the really antique 90-degree angle that it was to a 45-degree angle. And as you go down the street, you see that we've taken large areas of parking and we've turned them into parallel parking, or I'm sorry, into 45-degree angle parking. Pretty standard stuff. For those of you that have been in Royal Oak for a long time, you might remember the businesses struggle to get Washington Avenue with angle parking instead of parallel. Everybody said that was going to be terrible, but it's been lovely. And Washington is actually 5 feet narrower than Delamere. But the difference here is that the city doesn't have to pay for any of this on-street parking. All of this is going to be paid for by private landowners with license agreements. So really, I mean, that takes care of the issue and is a total win-win for the corridor. You know, if you look at it from a safety perspective, there's really no safety issues here. There's no warrant for anything to change on this corridor. There are no statistics which show a high rate of accidents from parking. There's 3 accidents on the corridor. These 3 fender benders don't prove anything about the danger of the parking. All they do is show is that there's no reason. There's no high speed. And, you know, I come from the family of thought that if it's not, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. In this particular corridor, this has been working for 70 years. So why violate the master plan to change it and destroy 82 spots? If you look at it from a financial analysis, parking is worth about $20,000 a spot. So there's $2.4 million of parking that the public can use. And there's nothing that says that this parking can't be metered at night or that the public can't use it for gyms and things like that. And my clients would be amenable to allowing the public to use the parking after 6 o'clock after their businesses have closed. So this really increases the viability of the corridor. The plan from the city engineer saves 38 spots. This plan from the city's consulting engineer saves 78. So really, I mean, the city plan, the city engineer's plan, with all respect to the city engineer, eliminates $1.64 million worth of parking that corridor needs to continue to thrive and evolve. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to ask you to table this agenda item, request that the city engineer engage with Nowak and Frous to complete the angle parking plan, and work with the urban planning team and landscape engineers to increase the beautification and rainwater detention of the corridor. My clients are more than willing to work on rainwater detention, to work on bioswales, to work on rain gardens, to work on any place that we can plant major trees, because they're very collaborative. They want to see this neighborhood work. And one of the other things that they want to see is us not rush this. This is the first major redo of this corridor in 70 years. While I appreciate the engineer wanting to redo the pavement, and my clients appreciate that because it's in rough shape, we need to do this in a considered process that honors our master plan. I mean, essentially, we're looking at redoing an existing commercial neighborhood that's been in place for at least 70 years with this configuration. I don't know why we want to rush. Noack and Frous says that we can do angle parking here, that it's going to work, it's going to add to detention, and it's doable. So what's the problem with tabling this and asking the engineer to engage with Noack and Frous to complete this angle plan and come back to you with a plan that preserves parking, enhances rainwater detention, takes care of all the insurability, maintenance, striping issues, and then we can talk about the other elements of a major upgrade to this neighborhood, because my clients have a lot of other things they'd like to do. They'd like to do a TIFA, they'd like to get rid of the power poles, they'd like street lights. And what I've seen, especially on 11 Mile where our hotel is, that things get done piecemeal. So on 11 Mile, they put down a new street. And then consumers came and ripped up the street to do a bunch of stuff. And then Edison came and they had the stuff, and the street needs to be redone because it got ripped up so many times. Let's come up with a complete street plan for this corridor that's attractive and detains rainwater and is safe and is awesome, instead of just doing something which I guarantee you is against the master plan and is going to drive these businesses into the arms of other communities.
Mr. Razor, I'm going to ask you to start wrapping it up here.
Well, I'll tell you what, Chairman Godek, I appreciate your time and your indulgence, because actually I was done.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Razor. That was actually very thorough, and there's some concepts to that.
Thanks, James.
That I think are
Oh, we do have two other people that wanted to speak, just FYI, Dan.
Yep.
Oh, a few other people, several other people.
Let's go right to that. On the rest of this, I'd like people to get their point across in 3 minutes or less, so we can talk about this at the committee level. So go ahead, Jonathan.
Okay, first up, we have Patrick McGee. Patrick, you just need to unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Hi, my name's Pat McGee, 4524 Elmhurst Avenue. I've spoken before at this traffic committee, and as Holly knows, I'm very stickler at looking at data and always making data-driven decisions. What Jim presented is not good data. The drawings are from old. They don't have the sidewalks. They're not accurate, so I don't think they should be shared anymore, as the street doesn't represent that anymore. I just walked it today. Many of the cars parked aren't actually for the businesses. They're cars that are for sale from the businesses, that people just park cars on that right away and they're selling them. I'd like to put my support behind the 38 spots. I think that's a very reasonable approach. And was failed to mention was the Normandy Oaks Park, right behind those businesses, is a huge brand new parking lot that could be utilized. We're talking more spots than any of the other businesses have even seen, which was not even brought up. And that parking lot is connected by sidewalks and is directly adjacent to those businesses. They could open up their fence and bam, they're at the parking lot of the park, and their customers or people could park there. I don't see why there's any issues. The angle parking that was proposed, that's a terrible idea, as cars would be backing out into the right of way. I guess I don't know how much more I could say that I don't support what Jim Razor was presenting. I support what the city of engineer has suggested. The loss of parking spots on the road, yes, but there's a parking lot right next to the businesses that can double the amount of parking that any of them could possibly need. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Next up, we have Paul C. Paul, you just need to unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Hi, great, thank you. Well, my name is Paul Chikorian. I own 4507 Delamere, as well as I think 5 or 6 other buildings on Delamere, Leafdale, and Fernley. I also am the executive managing director and market leader for Colliers International, which is a commercial real estate firm in Southfield, and we oversee Southeast Michigan. So I'm in real estate every day. And I just want to say, I think the plan that Jim Razor actually put forward is tremendous. I saw it earlier today. I certainly agree that the situation now is not ideal. I think it just looks poor. People are parking in all different ways, and it's less safe than something in a controlled environment. However, the buildings and the businesses have adapted to this parking. And now, as Jim mentioned, you have retail, in fact, with gyms. So, to remove the parking, obviously everyone said it'd be harmful, not only to the businesses, but the owners and the residents. And there's just simply not enough parking. If you drive down the street during the day, most of these spots are parked with businesses, clients, etc. The gentleman before me who spoke, I'm not sure what street he's looking at, because I don't think I've seen more than 1 or 2 cars for sale in the 15 years I've driven up and down those streets. So I think he's in a different city. But keep in mind that this is still a light industrial area. The thought of changing this into this pedestrian area is a little fetched, because you've got businesses with trucks that are delivering things. My last tenant was a landscape company. They had big trucks and trailers coming in and out daily. So if you're going to take the parking away, you're going to also reduce the value of these buildings. There's no other way around it. When I go to lease or sell a building, especially in these areas, one of the main questions is parking. And when you have parking in front of the building like we've had for 70 years, that factors into the ability to lease it. That factors into the ability to sell it. If you take those parking spaces away, you've changed the ratios, and the building value is dramatically impacted. There's no other way around it. So, now you're going to look at more vacancy, potentially a lower tax base, because I would certainly appeal all my taxes. And then you're going to have lower grade uses, like the landscaper I had who completely destroyed my property. So, I think that the concept of reducing the parking and changing it dramatically is really a tough road to plow. There's even, I know you can't have adverse possession against the public or municipality, but obviously this has been there for 70 years. All the rules of adverse possession are as clear as day here. Not that it would ever come into play, but for the city to all of a sudden say after 70 years, oh, you weren't supposed to be doing that, is just, I think it's reckless. So, and you talk about changing this all into green, those lawns won't be kept up. You're going to have lower grade tenants, and they're not going to keep these lawns up. So now you're going to have burned out grass and weeds that are going to look horrible. There's no sprinkler systems up there. So what I think, based on what Jim Razor said, this area is improving. I'm certainly improving my building. The neighbor next to me completely improved his building. These gyms are beautiful. This area is in the direction of really transforming. If you look at what Jim put in front of you, we have the opportunity, and as he said, it's once in a 70-year span, once in a lifetime, arguably, to really make this a dramatic improvement. So, the angled parking, I don't agree with parallel. I just see it as a very unattractive and not functional use on Delamere. I think the angled parking, especially with the addition of nice green belts, nice street lighting, trees, you almost have the ability to make this feel like a main street. And I think we can encourage more high-end uses, more buildings to be, painted, freshened up on the exterior. There's still some old uses. These buildings will go and get freshened up, and it'll look beautiful. It'll make the residents happier because they'll have a nice, attractive street. Angled parking is a very good option. It's safer in some ways, because obviously they're parking in one direction as opposed to right now where people are parking in all different directions. So I guess my final message is this is an opportunity to really create a win-win for the city, for the business owners, for the residents. I think the plan Jim put in front of us really captures everything. I really do. I think it's a beautiful option. And I agree with everything he said, that we should take the time and have it really reviewed. And that's all I really have to say. But I think I just think this is a great opportunity for everybody right now to really create a beautiful street.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Art Harrison Interiors. You just need to unmute yourself.
Hello, this is Arturo Sanchez and Barry Harrison from 4339 Delamere. Jim is actually speaking on our behalf as well as many of our neighbors as we've all gone in collectively on this. We're definitely much more engaged. I know the first speaker said that that all the buildings would have more than enough parking just using our side lots, but that is unfortunately not true. Many of the buildings would be dramatically impacted and actually would not meet the city's codes for parking. So again, I don't know where he's getting his data, and I don't know how he knows all of our business needs. That said, the parallel parking again would diminish so much of our parking, and there's no way that there is no sidewalk directly to that park. So I don't see where the concept of us using that. Yeah, our employees are not going to walk over there to in the dead of winter or in the rain. So again, we're definitely want to work with the city. We know that this is a lot of work for all of you. Having sat through 2 of these meetings, we definitely bow down to you for what you do. But we would like you to seriously consider what Jim has put together because we have all worked very hard on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next up we have Alan. Alan, you just need to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Jennifer. Can everybody hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
My name is Alan Kroll. I have a dual purpose here tonight. I am a resident, 20-year resident. I actually live in 1050 Iroquois Boulevard, and thank you so much for leaving our stop sign. I am tonight, though, speaking on behalf of the Royal Oak Chamber of Commerce, which I preside over as president of the board of directors. We have 8 or 9 of our members housed either on Delamere or on the supporting streets. And I always try to get everything to go win-win. We've heard that a lot of times today. And I'm always confused how you could ever have a win-win when one side wasn't even spoken to. Nobody understands what our members do and the people on Delamere do day to day, how the facility impacts their lives, how each of those parking spaces is meaningful. And I know it's fairly easy to just wipe it all out and say, boom, I've got this on my desk and I've got to move it forward. However, the chamber got involved in here, and what you're looking at in Nowak and Frauss's design was actually designed by one of our members, just as a sample of what could happen in a couple of blocks. So we are very concerned, and we think we have a wonderful opportunity to have a city business relationship here and really have a win-win, one that the city can be very proud of. After all, we're about to open up our new park. This neighborhood's obviously changed, but that doesn't mean that the nature of what our members are doing on this street has changed, even though we decided to add a park instead of a golf course. It wasn't that long ago that I was standing at Fire Defense, who's a vendor of mine, dodging golf balls. So the street has taken a sudden change, but however, I think that we can't ignore the stakeholders. It's easy to talk about all the people that are going to come here, but in fact, these people have been here. I haven't heard anybody argue any of the facts yet. Nobody's saying, I won't do that, I won't do this, I won't do that. So I agree with Jim and the people. I think we need to slow this process down, because I think at the end of the rainbow, we can have really something great as opposed to something that'll chase some of our business people who've been here a long time. I'm a little selfish being the president of the chamber because we don't have all that many business districts to choose our memberships from. So Delamere is very important to us, and it has the looks of being really cool down the road. So I would hope that we'd all pull back, look at it as a win-win, a business city collaboration, and try to bring this thing home that we can all be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alan. Let's see. Next up, we have Patty Soon. Patty, you just need to unmute yourself.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted.
Yep, we can hear you.
Hi, good evening. I'm Patty Sunny from 4326 Delamere Boulevard. I work there with my dad, Kevin Heinz, who owns the building. Our family also owns 4622 Delamere Boulevard. My grandpa built many of the buildings on Delamere back in the 1950s and the 60s. Since the 1950s, the owners have kept those right-of-ways paved for parking and have had no issues with the city or with anyone really. At 4326 Delamere, we have a fenced parking lot in the rear of our building, which is used by our tenants. We have our offices in the front, and so therefore we park in the front of the building. We can't park in the back. Basically, we oppose the parallel parking plan. It's not going to work on our street with the truck traffic and with the number of cars that park safely in front of the businesses, especially the numbers that we have during non-COVID times. We believe that the plan that the Delamere Boulevard owners and Jim Razor have come up with to have the angled parking, among other things, is a good plan. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Patty. Okay, that's everybody that wanted to speak, but I see that Jim Razor and Art Harrison Interiors did raise their hand again.
Okay, just let them back in, but guys, please keep it short so we can move on with this topic. So give them 3 minutes each.
Okay, I'm gonna bring Jim Razor in first here. Jim, you just gotta unmute yourself.
Thank you so much. I'll be very brief. I appreciate your diligence and your patience. I just wanted to point out a couple of things. So if you could please, Ms. Caudell, put up the actual drawings that are in white. So let me just explain. So earlier today, because one of the gentlemen said the sidewalks weren't on them, and actually the sidewalks are, these are the drawings that were produced by Nowak and Fraus. This afternoon, Ms. Donahue asked if they could be shared with an overlay of the satellite. And the engineer, Brad, told me that the only issue with that is that based on the position of the satellite, it might change a little bit how the overlay looks. So these are the actual drawings done from the actual renderings that Nowak and Fraus prepared for Royal Oak from the road. And I just wanted to show those because you can see that the sidewalk is on those. And Ms. Caudell, if you could show the next one, please. And I wanted to just touch on one other thing that we hadn't touched on yet. One of the really cool things about this plan is that it keeps 15-foot wide traffic lanes. You can see right there, there's about 30 feet. And that's important because you have a lot of semi-truck traffic on this stretch. And while I really appreciate the city engineer's diligence in trying to fit parallel parking onto this street, I really feel like 15-foot lanes, and we actually tried to see if we could do an island in the middle of this, and it kind of works, but we're still a little concerned about, turn in and turn out. I think that you should look at these plans from Nowak and Fraus as very preliminary plans, but I think they're plans that could be really well developed and safely developed. And I think they look great with all these islands. I don't quite know what you call the landscaped portion where you take out the spaces so that you do the angle. But the only last thing I wanted to point out is we're very collaborative with the city, and we've presented a plan to you that actually decreases parking by 42 spots. So it's not like we're just saying, no, we want to keep all the parking. We don't want to collaborate with you. We're coming to you with our plan, which reduces parking by a third. So we think that, we're bending over backwards, honestly. I mean, my clients are just hardworking people, third generation people that just want to stay in this neighborhood and continue to employ Royal Oakers. And they presented a plan which really gives them a haircut, but they can live with it because they're trying to be collaborative and cooperative. So I'd really urge you to let Nowak and Fraus and Ms. Donahue and I work up, develop this plan more to take into account the rainwater detention, to take into account, where streetlights could go, where cool things could go for this neighborhood. That's all we're asking. I mean, it just seems like some urban planning looking at this, and then we can have a corridor here that we're all super proud of when people are going to that new park or going down to their new condo or going to CrossFit, from Birmingham or, their new place. I just think that's a reasonable ask. So that's my ask. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, that is everybody. We are all set.
Great, thank you, Jennifer. If nothing else, that was very informative and well-attended exchange of information. I hadn't looked at the this plan that you're sharing right now, so I see some positives here, and I guess I want to open it up to the committee, get some thoughts about where we could go, but from to try to maintain a focus here, Holly, are we we're looking at trying to recommend either some plan or for the April 12th commission meeting? How do we frame this to where we go forward, in your opinion?
Yeah, ultimately, I'm looking for direction from the commission, how to proceed with the detailed design out here. So, we've got some preliminary options, preliminary number of spots. So really, I just need a takeaway, go ahead and design it this way. Because I kind of like what Jim said, I don't want to just fix the road and try to ignore what's out there right now. It needs to be addressed. It's been ignored since when, the 50s or something. It's like I can't give a right-of-way permit, can't really give a license agreement without the commission's blessing. So really just looking for some direction here so we know how to design and move forward.
Okay, I'd like to hear any comments from our committee.
Hello, this is Balam. Couldn't we just table this until we have some more information before we make any suggestions?
It's certainly a possibility. I'm looking kind of for any comments or positives and negatives about what they heard today.
This is Andrew. I had a question about the feasibility of these licensing agreements that are being suggested, and maybe this is too far into the weeds of what we're discussing, but this is quite a few different businesses that we're talking about. I get the feeling from Mr. Razor that he doesn't represent every single one of them along this road. And if we go this route that they're proposing, and we only get, say, 60%, 80% of people that are willing to purchase a licensing agreement, I guess my question is, what happens with the rest of the property?
So if this went forward and the commission said we would approve some sort of license agreement, it would be on a property by property basis. So each property could either come forward and ask for it, or could say it's way too much money, or for whatever reason, I don't really want to do it. Let's turn it all to grass. At least that's how I would envision it. I did a really, really rough takeoff on just costs, like what it might cost a typical business to tear all this out, put in new curb and gutter, and put in concrete paved areas. And we're talking like in the 15K to 30K range. And again, that's super rough, but just to kind of give you a ballpark order of magnitude of what the cost is that we're talking about per business, that's sort of where we would be looking. But yeah, they could each do it on a case-by-case basis. The tricky part, of course, is, if we're talking 19 businesses, presenting 19 different license agreements to the commission, discussing each one, it can be hairy. So if there was a way to consolidate everybody perhaps into one commission meeting and present them individually, but perhaps all as one group or something, that's probably how I would look to do it, if ultimately the commission wanted to even entertain that idea. Does that answer your question?
It does. Just as a follow-up, so I get a better idea. And again, this might just be too far in the weeds, but I'm going to ask it anyway. But if a business declines to go the route of a licensing agreement, then the city would would wipe it and put in green space or something along those lines. Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah, that would be my thought, because like I said, I can't just leave them the way they are. I either need to
Right.
install full height curb or leave a dropped curb for some sort of parking area.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Holly.
Holly, I have a question. Is there some sort of time constraint that would push us to act quickly here? What are we up against time-wise?
Yeah, originally our goal was to try and get this paved in 2022. And so we were trying to get the concept approved by our April 12th meeting so that we could set aside the CDBG funds and actually build the project in 2022. The planning division, yes, they can amend their budget. They can change the CDBG plan or the budget throughout and make amendments. Their biggest concern is like if we're talking, I think it was $300,000, if that all of a sudden goes away, do they have another project to throw in its place? Because we definitely don't want to just throw away free money from the government. So I think they don't really like the idea of maybe we'll do it, maybe we won't. We need something a little bit more consistent. But we could push this off into 2023. At that point, I'd start getting nervous. Our road millage funding ends in 2024. So it's like I need a decision by, in a decent amount of time that we could design it and build it in a construction season.
I had a question, but I don't want to step on anyone's toes. My question's for Holly. I don't know if this is just too preliminary because it does seem like there's a lot of balls in the air, but what are your thoughts about this presentation given to us by Mr. Razor? Do you have any initial takeaways or concerns, or
That's a broad
just trying to get the general vibe? Because, I'm not an engineer, I'm an attorney, criminal attorney. So this, I don't have an initial reaction when somebody's trying to it feels like wheedling from us, like, look how reasonable this is. And maybe it is, but I don't know. I don't have that knowledge base. So I'm kind of looking to my expert here.
Okay, I'll do my best. In general, as a staff between planning and engineering, we're against any of this parking in the right of way. To us, it's a lot of additional stormwater runoff. It's potential safety issues. Of course, that needs to be weighed with the business side of things and how businesses operate. And that's why we came up with our plan of some parallel parking. We at least provide something there for the businesses, not that the city is required to in any way. Every business is responsible for providing their own parking. And I do want to make it clear that even if these spots do get added, they are not the business's spots. Anybody can park here, anyone in the public. They're not reserved for a specific business. And that's always how license agreements work. And they also will not let any business come into compliance with zoning requirements for parking. So if they were redeveloping or something and had to go in front of the zoning board, none of these spots get counted towards whatever their parking requirement might be. So I think that was kind of implied with one of the speakers. So I did want to clarify that. Angled parking, we do have it on Washington. That's also a downtown area with no private parking lots. And that was added by eliminating the outside lanes of traffic on Washington. That wasn't a major reconstruction or anything like that. We just simply eliminated a lane of traffic and added the parallel spots. So I don't know that that's a reasonable comparison to this situation, which is not a downtown area, and every business does have paved areas on site. I'm not saying that they all have enough paved areas to accommodate parking, because as I said, we don't really have that data to study and to know that for a fact. Green infrastructure and stormwater management is a huge, huge goal of the city. It's a huge goal of mine, very near and dear to my heart, maybe too much so. But, when we have an opportunity to get rid of pavement and have green space, I'm always going to be for that. And while these are some landscaped islands, this is not green infrastructure. These are small little areas of grass, so I don't know that this really meets the standard of really making a vast improvement in stormwater management on this street. So I guess those are some of my initial takeaways. They're kind of scatterbrained, but my initial thoughts anyway.
Thank you.
This is Andrew again for Holly. You know, there's some discussion about tabling everything for a cycle here. My thought on that though is that it seems like a lot of times work on these projects, especially from the business's angles, probably starts to get done and ideas get moving as we get closer to hearing dates, committee meetings, and things like that. So, is there any benefit that you see from you know, pushing this back up to the commission level and having them look at everything we just talked about today, rather than just tabling it and coming back in front of our committee for another presentation, whether we're any closer to any resolution between businesses and city at that point or not?
Yeah, absolutely. I would really love to see a solid recommendation go to the commission on this issue, you know, one way or the other. I don't really see what tabling it is going to do for us. You know, we've got 2 preliminary plans, and while there's definitely, I have comments on this one that would change it a little bit, not to the point where we couldn't present this to the commission and get their feedback on it and see if it's something they wanted to direct staff to move forward with, or if they just wanted to say, nope, we're not doing that, go with the other option. So, you know, maybe there is a reason to table it, but it's not immediately obvious to me.
Great question, Andrew.
This is
And,
Rick Karlowski.
I
Didn't
was
we have a
thinking about the same
conversation in
thing.
the last meeting that I think it was, I mean, when did the Jim Razor plan, or whatever you want to call it, come forward? Because I know that last time we suggested that they bring their ideas forward, and it was kind of like, well, we don't want to redesign anything. We want to have input from the business owners, and I think we kind of got that at the commission meeting. If I recall, the discussion was, yeah, we're going to take a look at it and see if we can add some parking to it and not just completely kill it. So I'm just wondering, when did this concept come about, and exactly how long is anybody going to have I mean, this is 23rd of March. You're talking about a commission meeting on April 12th. There has to be some kind of presentation from the landowners as far as, you know, fulfilling the stormwater runoff and the rest of it before the commission can even make a decision as to what they want to do. And I guess the other point I'm making is, I don't know why this has anything to do with the traffic committee, because it's not a traffic issue. This is a city green space runoff type of goal issue, not necessarily, you know, we don't have a traffic count issue here. We don't have any kind of speed issue here. This is purely a, do we have parking spots or not, kind of an issue here. So I don't know exactly what kind of input as a traffic committee we're going to be doing here, other than I understand the business owner's position. I'm just a little disappointed that it took this long for them to get a alternative plan developed and submitted, because I know we discussed this 2 months ago, and we asked for this. I know I did. I asked for a specific recommendation by the property owners, and kind of got the opinion of, well, we don't want to design anything. So I'd love to hear exactly what it is that we're supposed to do now, because if we're running out of time, then from a traffic committee perspective, 38 parking spots is fine with me. But I will agree, however, before I go with that, any thought of using the Normandy Oaks parking lot for business owners is ridiculous. No, there's no way. You're going to have games going on there. You're going to have all sorts of stuff going on there where you're going to need that parking. So absolutely, positively not. No, we should not even think about using a Normandy Oaks parking lot for as a reserve for this issue.
Okay, I don't want to get too far off into different directions on what we're tasked with or what we're not, or I do see your point, and this is a fringe topic for the traffic committee, but it is in front of us, and we've been asked to look at it and listen to the business owners and public comment and see if we can. The city commission is going to have the tough part with figuring out what to do here, and it's kind of a polarizing choice between the two options. I particularly, I don't know if 3 weeks would be, I guess, Holly, if you were to work with this presentation that we're looking at right now over the next 3 weeks before it went in front of the city commission to see the percentage of green space that could be added or improved to this from its existing, and so that information could be consumed by the city commission in an informative way. Does that make sense? So when they get this, and I guess I'm suggesting if they had option A and the business option for them to compare and say, okay, this one we've got to do 26 licenses potentially, and we only get a 30% improvement in rainwater retention. And the other way we get this, and we have to do this. So they can make an educated decision, and we don't necessarily pick one or the other tonight, and we just say, here are the two options that were discussed and the benefits and drawbacks of each. And you guys go, because it is more of a city commission. It will be obviously their purview of what is going to get done here. So I don't know if this plan can be polished up in those particular criteria that's important to the city commission to make a good decision could be captured. I rambled there, but I tried to get it down to the last sentences. What could you think that could happen?
Yeah, I think it's a somewhat daunting task, but possibility. So, all the analysis and like my commission recommendations and stuff, I would have to have done basically by, Good Friday, let's say. So that gives me like a week and a couple of days maybe to do all that, which it's doable. I guess I'm worried of overcommitting myself here, but if I can get the CAD file from Jim, I could try and do a side-by-side so that they're kind of the same image where you see the entire street on a sheet, and then maybe have a table of metrics that kind of explains one over the other. If this committee would be comfortable with me, moving forward with that without presenting to you first, I think that's something I could accomplish, or at least try to.
I appreciate that, and I know I don't want to add to your work, but maybe working with the company that Fraus and whoever, because just looking at this, I don't know, if on the surface, being both on planning and traffic, I do see some benefit to it. It's almost like a little bit of a compromise, and I don't want to skew the committee one way or the other, but like just the area in front of the parking blocks that we're looking at right now, you see a myriad of triangles going on there. If those are also kind of grayed out as to ways to deal with the runoff of the sidewalk, just ways to make this one better. I also sat through the lengthy commission meetings, the city commission meetings, where we did go through the license agreements for Campbell Road. And we did it over, I believe, 2 or 3 meetings where they were lumped together between half-mile roads and when we, and there was just a couple of stragglers where businesses couldn't, I'm sorry, homeowners couldn't decide whether they wanted to do it or not, and those were just not done. But there'll be at least situations here where it's not going to be easy. My personal recommendation from what I get is that we should present at the April 12th a choice of at least these 2 plans in the best way possible, and see what happens.
Well, this is Rick Kurlowski, and I can agree with that. I'm just looking at this from a traffic committee, traffic flow standpoint. I don't see any traffic issues with either plan or even a hybrid of maybe a bit less of the angle parking one versus but it's just the plain parallel parking. So from a traffic perspective, Holly, do you see any issues with the plan presented by the property owners?
There's a couple schools of thought on parallel versus angled parking, and you can find studies that will defend whatever position you want to defend. Some studies say that parallel parking is more dangerous because people have to exit their vehicle and walk out onto the road to get, to whatever business they're going to. Other studies say that angle parking is dangerous because you're backing out and you have a bit of a blind spot. It can be hard. You can slow down traffic. Yeah. So both of them have potential safety issues. I love my original plan of just no parking at all and just a regular Royal Oak Road like all of our other roads. But I think that's probably in the past now and not really a feasible option that the commission is probably interested in. So I think that's originally why we brought it to the traffic committee, is that we had some safety concerns with all these paved unlicensed areas. There wasn't really a great commission or committee to bring it to. So we kind of went with the traffic committee because it's a road and it's kind of blossomed into this big issue.
So the proposed staff recommendation, did we have that? What was that?
I just put it back on that page.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm sort of reading it.
Yeah, so it's basically the staff recommendation was to go with parallel parking on the east side of the road and all the other road improvements that we'd been talking about.
I guess if I was to lobby my fellow committee persons, because I'm not allowed to make a motion as chair, that we would edit this to include a second option and try to get metrics associated with option A and option B.
I'll motion that we accept the recommendation with the addition of a metrics comparison of the proposed plan by the business owners.
Is that Andrew? I'm sorry, I didn't.
It's Blaine.
Blaine, great.
Yeah, don't blame me for that, Holly. That was Blaine.
I just,
that wasn't Holly, that was Dan.
I'll second that. This is Tom Allen.
Okay. I know that was real general. Is that clear to you, Holly? And
let me take a stab at if I understand. So you guys can see it there in front of you on the screen. So kind of to allocate, blah, 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 blah. Removing, I'll take the word all pavement out. I'll just say removing pavement in the adjacent public right of way. And then yada, 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 yada. as outlined in option A or the option presented by the businesses to be presented to the city commission with, I'll come up with better wording, but there's some sort of table of metrics. Is that kind of what we were going for?
It is, yes.
Yeah, it is.
I just have a question on that. Who's going to do the analysis? I mean, Holly, I don't want to put a whole, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that the business owners should come up with their plan and show how their plan meets the city goals of rain runoff issues, stormwater retention, and green space. So how is this going to work? I mean, I don't want to get into another, for lack of a better term, pissing contest as to no, it's not this much rain off. It's going to be this. It's going to, who's going to make a determination? What are the criteria for it, and how is it going to be measured?
I mean, my initial thought was that I would, as long as I have the CAD file from Noack and Frous, it's pretty easy to measure areas, come up with volumes. That shouldn't be too difficult. And my plan is to do it just like that, black and white, no assumptions really made. Or if there are assumptions, I'll have to state them, I suppose. But, you know, I didn't hire Noack and Frous. This is purely a contract between Jim Razor and Noack and Frous. So like, I can't really give them work to do on this, and I don't have a funding source to give them work to do on this. So
No, that's certainly didn't mean it that way.
Oh, no, I know. So I guess I would feel more comfortable presenting something to the commission that I had researched and that I can back up that data as opposed to relying on an outside source.
Okay.
That's a fair question, and I guess I would add to that in that if you could do a little bit of back and forth, Holly, with Noack and Frous, so that when you present option A and option B, that it's apples to apples kind of thing. Like the anything that would suck in water to the ground would be colored green, and you'd have so much square foot area. So there isn't a lot of objectiveness to it. It would be more like what Mr. Karlowski is suggesting, where it would be pretty transparent as far as one isn't being favored over the other. These are the metrics that make this one look good or bad in that regard. And you could probably limit it to 3 or 4 things in terms of parking spaces, rainwater retention, and green space. I don't think you have to go too much in depth with a lot of things, and there's merits to doing it one way or the other, and I do think this is a city commission thing more than a traffic committee, but I think we're passing it along the best way we can by doing this in this manner.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And we had just got these today. I do have some comments, and so there's probably not a lot. There's a few spaces, for example, that might be too close to an intersection that I'll have to remove, or things like that. So once I kind of do a preliminary review, I'll share that with Brad Brickle, and we can make sure that he agrees that makes sense or whatever. And I'll try and make it more of a back and forth between the designers.
That sounds great. Any other comments from the
committee? Well, just one last one with regards from the traffic committee recommendation is that we as a traffic committee, from a traffic perspective, can support either type of plan, right? There's nothing in the property owner's plan that will cause us any great concerns, and obviously there's no problem with the parallel parking that will cause us any great concerns from a purely traffic flow safety perspective. The rest of it is got more to do with city goals than anything else.
I'm totally fine with adding that caveat that Richard just outlined to the motion.
kind of a disclaimer, you know, it's not really directing anybody to do anything, but yeah, that's a good point. That from a traffic committee standpoint, there isn't really a strong objection or
endorsement, either way.
exactly. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. So, you know, it's more of a disclaimer. We're good with either one. You guys pick. Is a simple way to put it. So I'm not hearing anybody else got comments on this, on what we're doing here. Are we good? Not seeing any hands who want to. You have a motion in support. I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you all for looking at this and your everybody's hard work on it. Moving along, I think that's. Is there anything else we got tonight, Holly?
I have one. It's very, very short, I promise. I just wanted to bring it to the committee's attention because it is a traffic change. Right here by City Hall, the intersection of Troy and 3rd. We opted to add 2 stop signs to make that a 4-way stop temporarily because right now there's, with the barricades for the downtown park and also for City Hall in Troy Street, it's almost impossible to see traffic when you're trying to turn from 3rd. So we added stop signs for Troy traffic northbound and southbound as construction is going on. So if you notice those, we didn't do those really without your blessing. They're just a temporary construction thing.
It's a great ad. That's right around the corner from my office, and there's not a day that goes by that somebody doesn't almost run into somebody else there. So that's a great ad.
Good. Is that going to be put into the minutes or anything so we can get like a public service announcement during, or we can just mention this again maybe during the when it's resolutions are brought up in front of the city commission?
It'll definitely be in the minutes, and I can make sure just to kind of, I'll note that when I talk.
I did get an email from one of the city commissioners really briefly here about kind of traffic speeds in the residential areas that overall they just seem to be increasing. People just kind of, I don't know if it's less traffic or people are stressed from the pandemic or whatever, but it just seems like they're getting a lot more feedback about and it cut through speeding traffic and you know, it's besides stuff like what we've had to deal with tonight. Our biggest problem that we could use a stick to beat back would be speeding cut through traffic. And I was always kind of in favor of trying to do public service announcements too. Like if I told the commissioner, well, why don't you speak up during your meeting when you have a big audience and say, slow down. Because when I talk to the ROPD and they say, when you write tickets, what's the address on the ticket? And they tell me, well, the zip code is either 48067 or 48073. So it's your neighbors that are speeding through our streets. So slow down, everybody. and maybe announce that to your friends and neighbors too. So that's my 2 cents for a long meeting tonight. And wrap that up with looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Tom Allen.
Seconded, Rick Kurlowski.
We have a motion support. All those in favor say aye.
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 Right, we're adjourned. Thanks so much.
Aye.
Everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.